Ready. Go for it.
Hi everybody, this is Jason Myers from Sales Engine, and I want to get right into the presentation. We got a lot of stuff to cover. So if we take a look at the buyer's journey before 2005, on the left you're going to see marketing's role, which was primarily branding and awareness. On the right you have sales that pretty much took it from there, and that meant finding prospects, diagnosing pain, educating them, and prescribing solutions, really running the majority of the sales process. Today that's very different. Marketing still plays a role in branding and awareness, and sales does a lot of differentiating and closing. However, now there's this big, large middle piece where buyers are educating themselves on their own digitally. That means they look at white papers, infographics, they might watch videos, read social media, read reviews about companies, and sometimes make their own short list to decide which companies that they actually plan to engage with. What's that mean to a company is that it's caused a lot of trouble. Marketing's still in charge of the branding and positioning, but they're also in charge of this middle piece and not always given the bandwidth, the people, or the skills really to pull it off. For decades, the B2B marketer has been a manager of projects. And with that, I would say that, the good idea with proper execution would always outperform the great idea with poor execution. So the best marketers were always the people that could get stuff done. So for example, if you look at a trade show, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end to that process. It's a project. So you book the space, you order your swag, you design the booth, you book your hotels, all that kind of stuff. And then you staff it, execute it, and ship your boxes home at the end and collect the leads for salespeople. If it was a campaign like direct mail, email, advertising, and so on, you'd start by identifying the channels you want to distribute to, determine your message, write the copy, then print, fold, and stuff, hit send, whatever you're going to do, and then try to measure your responses from that. So again, the punchline is that marketing in this format, when you talk about branding and positioning, is really, in fact, all association of projects. Not that there's anything wrong with projects and project managers, because they're still a necessary function. But the point that we're viewing here is that we have to view marketers as executors of project-based tasks that have changed significantly, just as the sales process has. So we talk consistently about marketing's role must be lead generators for sales. Certainly there's still a branding element, which we would also refer to as the top of the funnel. But at the end of the day, you've got to generate leads for sales. That's it. Feeding the sales team now is more of a process as opposed to a series of projects. So let's talk about the sales side of the equation. I think intuitively, a lot of you already know this, but sales reps used to be able to generate their own leads. It's not that buyers wanted to talk to sales reps, but that was really the only way that prospects could learn about best practices and solutions available in the marketplace. So it was marketing's job to kind of create awareness, and we used to call this create air cover for sales, so that they could get in front of prospects and they might have heard of them when they go to make a cold call. But back then, the most well-trained sales reps could easily fill his or her calendar with new opportunities using the phone, knocking on doors, and asking for referrals. I think a lot of you that grew up in sales probably thought that you were awesome at prospecting. The reality of the situation is that the buyer needed you much more than you actually needed them. And that was the real reason that you were successful at generating new appointments. You were the gatekeepers for the information about your company and how to apply those solutions. So as most of you know, the world has changed. The internet is now crushing a sales rep's ability to generate their own leads. And the skills and resources developed in the marketing department during this era have naturally lent themselves to projects that had a beginning, middle, and an end. So I think you can start to see what's causing a lot of these problems. B2B buyers today start with an anonymous Google search, which then leads them to the consumption of white papers, webinars, videos, blogs, and so on. And then as buyers learn what solutions are available in the marketplace, they diagnose their own problems and prescribe their own solutions. And unless marketing steps in to fill this digital void and engage these anonymous buyers, sales reps are going to miss out on deals that they never knew existed in the first place. In fact, Forrester says that as much as 80% of the entire buying process is complete before the prospect actually engages with a vendor. So if you think about this traditional sales funnel, and if marketing still owns the one-to-many projects at the top of the funnel, and if buyers aren't engaging sales reps until much later in the process, you have this huge hole to fill in the middle of the funnel. And that makes it really hard because the middle of the funnel is still very much a one-to-one engagement, where sales reps used to have meetings, even in person, where they could ask questions, react to their answers, read body language, and pivot the conversation in the necessary direction to lead them and nurture them through the sales cycle. But today, each prospect still engages with you in their own way, as no two buying journeys are actually alike. But the role of today's lead generation marketer is to figure out how to have those one-to-one conversations that salespeople used to be able to have on a regular basis, but now they need to have them digitally. That's not a project. It's a continuous process. And it's a lot more complex than even establishing a repeatable process, because not every prospect is going to follow a predetermined automated sales process. And they certainly won't fall into the funnel based on gravity. So if we keep up with this construct that lead generation is really the replication of conversations that sales reps used to have, but now they're digital, there are three core processes that kind of come into play here. The first one is content, which is digital conversations actually equal content consumption. So in other words, somebody reads your content, that counts as a conversation starter or a digital conversation. That conversation is a two-way street, and it doesn't matter if you start the conversation from a phone call, voicemail, email, or a prospect finds you through Google, social media, or a referral. Since the conversation is digital, it begins with content, and that might look like a white paper to download, a video to watch, a webinar. So you might have downloaded a white paper where you collect the leads, and that's all great, right? Well, not if those leads are going to be considered sales ready, which means that the conversation must continue before the prospect loses interest in you. In this case, let's say the conversation started with a prospect searching Google about a business problem and found you through a white paper on your website. But where they might meet your ideal prospect profile on paper because you researched them on LinkedIn or something like that, they're not ready to talk to a sales rep yet. The question is, they've got your white paper, so what are you going to say next? What are you going to send them as a follow-up next week, the week after, until they're ready to buy? It's simply not going to advance the conversation, and you're going to lose them. So the answer to that question, of course, is content, and whether or not that content that you deliver to them through personal emails, one-to-one from an individual rep, or if it's automated through a marketing automation system, or if it's content that you offer up to them in social media, your blog, and other resources, etc. Prospect needs to be able to consume and navigate through all of that content on their own pace and choose the types of content that they want to fulfill their own buying journey. So what may have started out as a simple project, say as a white paper, that may in fact generate a handful of leads, the process of building sales-ready leads requires a lot more content. It requires you to be a resource to them as you shelter them through the buying cycle. And in fact, the content never ends, because as soon as you stop producing content, you stop producing conversations. Because remember that content is a two-way interaction that's going on all the time. So what does that mean for marketing? What it really means is that marketing cannot toil over only creating a single piece of content or an artifact like a white paper. There's nothing wrong with that in and of itself, but it's not going to move the needle and it's not going to continue the conversation. It might start a dialogue for a good conversation, but it certainly won't be enough to continue the dialogue. Nurturing leads until they're sales ready is really going to require the mindset of a publisher, much like running a newspaper or a magazine, as opposed to, say, the author of a single book. There's no doubt that writing and storytelling is still an important component, but producing a daily newspaper requires a lot more resources and skills beyond the act of writing in and of itself, because it's a never-ending process. So we get this question a lot. How often should you publish? Because it isn't easy to produce enough content to support a B2B demand generation function. In fact, a Content Marketing Institute study said that 64% of small businesses and 53% of large enterprises said that producing enough content is a challenge that they face on a daily basis. So there's a couple of interesting studies, one of which is from HubSpot, which are major content producers. You probably get their emails. They suggest that there's a hockey stick effect that happens when you get over, say, 300 or 400 posts. And they say that when you get to like a library of 400 posts or so, that your leads on a monthly basis actually increase by 3x. But we all know that 400 posts is a lot, and it'll take most companies a long time to get there, especially if they're only publishing 2 or 3 blog posts a month. So it really begs the question of frequency. They would suggest that when you're posting either every other day, the frequency is similar to a hockey stick effect versus monthly or weekly, but there's a clear inflection point that says that you should be posting maybe 15 or 16 times a month. And if you do so, you're going to get 5x times the number of leads and build library at the same time. Above and beyond that, it really depends. There's another interesting study between HubSpot and SEO Moz, and both are very frequent publishers. And what they did was HubSpot publishes 5 times daily, and Moz publishes probably once daily. But they tried to measure the impact of what would happen if they cut their frequency in half, and then they also doubled their frequency to see what kind of impact on leads that it would have. The reality was that most of those changes didn't have a meaningful impact on the number of leads that were generated every month. And one of the big reasons for that is because most of the leads that they generate on a monthly basis actually come from the giant library of content that they've created and built over time. So most of the leads that you generate from the stuff that you publish today, this week, or this month are actually going to come from long-term keyword searches, long-tail keyword searches that are taking them to the old posts that already live on the site. So the frequency is important in terms of trying to get to the library of content that starts to develop lead flow on your website. But once you hit a critical mass, it becomes really more about training your audience to expect the kind of frequency that they desire. So for example, that your Forbes magazine comes every month and you look forward to that, or that the New York Times comes daily, and that and what types of in-depth articles they're going to do, and you might love them both equally, but they serve different purposes to you. And so that's kind of what you need to be to your clients. You need to approach this from the mindset of a publisher and get them to expect a level of frequency and depth in the articles that they're going to respond to. So B2B content marketing today is really about generating leads for sales by replacing the one-to-one conversations that salespeople used to be able to get more predictably. But with everybody jumping on the content marketing bandwagon, it's just not enough to publish a blog or white paper, because there's a lot of competition for that readership. Essentially, you've got to be better. And as I stated before, kind of cutting to the chase, your head of marketing really has to have the mindset of a publisher and not that of a branding and awareness expert. or else you're going to fall way short of your growth expectations. And the reason is I see a lot of these companies that are putting out content. They may put out a blog, they may put it out on social media, but they're still only doing exercises in branding and awareness. They're not closing the loop in terms of lead generation. So one question that we receive a lot is, what channels should we use on social media and how do we distribute that content? And we answer with a two-part question back to them. Where do your clients live? What do they look at digitally? What channels do they actively use? And then the second question is, what's your strategy around that? These two questions are important because if all you're doing is pushing out posts on Facebook and no one ever likes the post and there's no discussion, in other words, no audience really for it, what you've really done is created a 2002 version of a news page on your website that's where you used to put all your press releases. So if somebody happens to go there, they can see that your company has some activity and that you're still in business, but that's about it. Conversely, if they go to that news release page and they see the last one that's dated 18 months ago, they might wonder if you're still in business. But as long as you're continuously updating it, I wouldn't say that that process is actually going to do any damage, but you need to consistently get to your salespeople into meaningful conversations, and that's why you're doing content marketing in the first place. Again, the whole point of social media marketing in the B2B space is to digitally replicate the prospecting functions that the salespeople used to have on the phone and face-to-face. Anything that you publish is meant to be a conversation starter. So for example, if you publish an article that points back to your website and then ask a question to the audience that you developed, you're developing a digital dialogue when people answer and become engaged. And even better, if you've actually read this post and want to talk to us about how to restructure marketing and sales activity, and it actually generates leads, and you can do that right here. So put another way, if your content marketing program is not generating a two-way conversation, then all of this activity is just branding and awareness, and that's just not enough. Not in the B2B space. So here's how we envision the whole process. And I know this graphic is probably kind of small on the screen. Be glad to send it to you if you want to request it after the webinar. But essentially on the left, we have inbound campaigns, and that includes your Google searches for content, distribution of content through social media, any ads or ad retargeting that you're doing, basically anything that kind of amplifies and creates people to do searches and come through your website. On the right, you have outbound campaigns. This is the content that you actively distribute through your emails to like lists in the form of maybe newsletters or maybe thought leadership campaigns, or this could also be include calls made from your business development reps, your inside sales reps, and you see in the corner there the playbooks, and what that is that's kind of the conversion between marketing and sales, where marketing is educating sales as to what the potential pain points are in that particular campaign that they're sending out, so that when somebody responds or they download an article or they read something, the salesperson now has actionable intelligence that says, well, these people are interested in this content, so therefore they may have these pain points, and that's where you may want to start driving your conversation when you try to engage with them, whether that be on the phone or with an email. All of this leads to more traffic to your site, which is kind of pictured in the middle. And your goal is to convert that traffic into qualified leads, or we call them at that point marketing qualified leads. And if you see down in the bottom in the sales funnel, that's where MQL comes into play. At the bottom left, you're going to see the marketing automation system. This is like companies like HubSpot or Marketo, Pardot, probably heard some of those names. These systems are not only for emailing large amounts of content to big databases, but they're also for tracking click behavior in the CRM system. And I know that HubSpot's moving in this direction already, where they are trying to track all kinds of click behavior Our system actually integrates with Salesforce so that I can look up a lead record and I can tell everything that that person has ever clicked on from every campaign. So if I'm a salesperson trying to engage with that person, I can try to get an idea of what they might be interested in before you picking up the phone or sending them an email. Lead nurturing is the process of adding value as opposed to pushing for a meeting. So in other words, think of it as like, what can you send to the prospect in terms of content as a follow-up that really helps shepherd them through the buying journey and meet them where they're at. On the right side, you have sales alerts and analytics. Sales alerts indicate to the sales rep that there's somebody consuming a piece of content, and it gives you actionable intelligence, like we said, about what they're interested in. A sales alert is just like an email that's sent to the salesperson that says somebody's downloaded this form, and you can decide how to follow up with them at that point. And of course, analytics is the process of recording this entire process, knowing all of this digital behavior on a prospect in the CRM so that you can follow up and actually have a conversation based on something that you've generated in the content. The way we describe this is that it takes a fractional village to pull all this stuff off. And if you take a look at the different roles that are required to pull off a digital marketing program, and it's significant. Some of these roles are very technical in nature, and some of them are very artistic, literary, video-centric. It's very rare for all of these characteristics to kind of live with inside one or two people even. So what we're describing here is really the staff that's required in publishing a magazine. Remember, you're now a publisher now. As a content marketer, you're a publisher. So congratulations. Start acting like it and hire people who have some journalism experience, that know how to get people's attention through content, develop a relationship with readers, determine what content needs need to be developed, and get them coming back for more. Like I said, this is like hiring more journalists, but not branding and marketing experts. Content strategists like myself are journalists first and marketers second. I should also note that the publishing mindset needs to be extended to your entire business development and inside sales team, because if they're not using the content that's generated to get them involved in conversations, again, you are just doing this for branding and positioning purposes, and that's not enough. So many salespeople make the mistake of assuming that when somebody reads your content, they immediately become a prospect. And like I even wrote a blog post, if you want to check on my LinkedIn page yesterday, that said that no, just because I connected with you does not mean that I'm interested in talking with you. And it's the same thing. We figure that somebody downloads a piece of content and automatically that they become a sales lead and that we need to try to get a meeting with them. But if you go down this road too quickly, you're going to turn them off. So the right approach, again, is think like a publisher. How can you add value? What additional information can you send them that's going to be helpful to them in their buyer's journey? Do you know where they are in the buyer's journey? Are they just starting out? Are they starting to look for solutions? Have they gone down this road fairly far and they're kind of looking to find vendors? If you provide the right information, they're going to tell you exactly where they're at. But that's how you use content to get involved in sales conversations, because we all do business with those we know, like, and trust. And once you've developed that kind of relationship through your content, you'll get meetings. That's most of it for my presentation. I think we'll start with questions.
Why don't we take some questions right now? That would be great. So people, everybody, you can go on your keyboards and send in your questions on the left-hand side, and we can take some questions.
All right, I got a good first question here. They're asking, how is it that we go about deciding what to write? It's an excellent question. We run up against this all the time. Again, my answer to that is think like a publisher. Now, the way that we do it at Sales Engine Media is that we actually conduct messaging workshops, and you can do this internally on your own as well. But what we try to understand is, what are the pain points that the customer has that your solution solves? Remember that nobody cares about feature, function, and benefit. They don't care about you. I'm sorry to break your heart if that does, but they don't care about you. They care about, I have a problem. Can you solve that problem? Maybe they didn't even know they had a problem, but that's something that content marketing can do very well also, is address potential problems. So you need to map out what those pain points are. And then what we do is that we interview the thought leaders on camera, like on video inside our company, and we get them talking about the solutions that they solve and all that kind of stuff. And then when we have all that together, then we have all the information that we need to basically go draft white papers and blogs and all that kind of stuff and recycle content and all kinds of stuff. But it's that process that's really important of deciding what's important to write. Again, this is really the same as a publisher would do. Like an editor for a magazine is very, very in touch with the needs of his readers. He or she knows exactly what their readers respond to, what they want to know about, and keeps pumping content that they're going to respond to, not about the advertisers. Hope that answered your question.
I take Mary's question over there.
Just reading it here. So what's a strategy for finding all of these resources on an inexpensive basis? That's another great question, and one that I think companies get into a lot of trouble. So if you're working in somewhat of an older company that has marketing staff, it's a pretty good bet that a lot of them are not really content marketers. They're more of the traditional marketing people. And the problem in trying to outsource this is that, like I mentioned before, this is not a project. This is a process, and so it becomes difficult to outsource one white paper to a freelancer and say, hey, go write this and then post it up on the website and then really expect anything to happen. So I would say that if you're having difficulty figuring out what to write or want to know what the first step in doing this is, hire somebody that is a content strategist that basically that maps to like the editor position in a magazine. They're going to tell you what to write. They're going to get involved with your readership. They're going to figure out what needs to be developed, because the white papers, the infographics, even the videos, everything, those are all tactics. You've got to have a strategy of how you're going to get in front of people and how you're going to start generating these conversations.
One more question. You want to try to take that one?
The next question is, how do we get our experts they don't have a lot of time, essentially, is what they're saying, and it's hard to get them in one place to kind of develop all the interviews and things like that. And that's a great question as well. We solve that actually by doing the front work with the content strategy or the messaging workshops. And so we just do like an hour phone call that tries to hone in on one pain point and what are the facets beneath that pain point, so that we can then extract all that from on camera. And then when we try to go develop that content, we know exactly what we want them to say. So we can line up a person for an hour and ask them all the questions that we want, make sure that we get everything on camera or on tape that is required in writing. But that's how you kind of limit their time in terms of the thought leadership expertise that you have in-house. Another great question from Robin. How often do you recycle content? That's a fantastic question. And I will tell you that I recycle a lot of content. And I'll give you a good example. So I wrote a piece on our website that basically the new marketer needs to think from the mindset of a publisher. It was a long post, probably 1,500 to 2,000 words. And the next step I sent that out. I distributed it through social media. It had some resonance. I knew it was a good post. And so the next step that I did is I went to LinkedIn and I wrote under my persona, I wrote a piece that kind of referred to that piece, but was a little bit more edgy. And it started to spur discussion, and then they could click into that article. And so I keep finding up with new angles and new ways to refer to the really good posts that I have on my website, because they don't go away in terms of appropriateness. So if you're dealing with video, that process may be a little bit more difficult, because somebody sees the videos that they've seen before. Chances of that happening are actually pretty slim. But as a good journalist, you can come up with different angles on the same topic a lot. And so I think it kind of goes back to developing your main core strategy, and really what are the pain points that you want to address for your customers in the first place. And then everything is essentially recycled around different facets of those pain points, and constantly pointing people in that direction.
Let me just ask one other question. As you've noticed, as you've been talking, Jason, there are 3, 4 people standing in the doorway listening into you. Everybody wants to learn this topic. It's great. So one of the questions that they asked me to ask you is, when it comes to writing, is there some size limits that you would recommend, too short and too long? Because she was saying that very often she'll bring in people and say, well, I don't have a lot of time to write a whole lot. And she'll say, it doesn't have to be very large. And you said the same thing. But, if I write 2 paragraphs, is that too much, or is that for more of a blog as opposed to a different way? So give us some size limits.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so there's 2 different schools of thought on that. Now, if you look at HubSpot, they publish a lot of content. They're pretty short in nature. And by short, I mean 400 to 700 words. If you look at SEO Moz, they're more in favor of long form content, which is more like 1,500 words on a less frequent publishing basis. But their articles are much more in depth. They're much more engaging to the reader. They're much more based on research, and much more what I would call like magazine type content. So it really has to do with the strategy in the first place. I would tell you that in the long run, Google is starting to favor the longer form content, because it's just more appropriate in terms of what people are trying to find. So, and if you're Google, you want to send traffic to the most appropriate sites that you can find. And so because they've changed the algorithms in the last few years, so it's not all about keywords anymore. It's about traffic. It's about, long tail keywords. It's about really kind of helping Google figure out what that page is about. So long form is better in that case. And I can tell you that even our strategy with Sales Engine is that we've started going to more long form content, and are trying to increase the level of articles that we're writing on a daily basis.
So, and as you said before, you can recycle some of it, so you can use some of your old stuff and put it together and weave a whole new article.
Absolutely. Do it all the time.
Great. Well, I want to thank you very much, Jason. Let me make sure that we give everybody your contact information, because this lives forever, and we all have these leads issues, so this way they can contact you and find out more from your expertise, which you've been very generous with today, as well as your ability to help them if they have a particular project that they're working on that's very large and they want your expertise. And so I want to thank you so much for doing this, and please feel free to contact Jason if you need to. What I'd like to do quickly is give every